Yeah, so that was a lot of energy being thrown my way. I'm a little stunned. For at least the next combat round. Wow, they're still coming in! This is nuts! We managed to fit everybody like snugly in the room last year. We're gonna start stacking folks here in a minute. So get real comfy. Make some piggyback friends here during the panel. Man, I can already see a bunch of Mighty Nine cosplayers scattered throughout the audience. So I'm stalling for a moment as we start getting people into the room, but let's get this started in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to individually wave to each person as they enter to confuse them. Hello. Hi, welcome. You, sir, welcome. Good to see you. Duo Fets, go enjoy the back. Hello. Cool Foxhead, go say welcome to the party. Hey guys, glad you can make it. Thank you for your patience. Awesome. Dig the Overwatch hat, that's pretty slick. Bright yellow shirt, good color choice. Nice. And, oh no, it's still coming. Oh, just denied out the door and let it back in. Okay, we're good.
He's not drunk.
Just under the wire. Are we good?
That's good enough. To be like that
So welcome everyone. This I don't even know what year at Akon this is for me. It's 3 as a guest, but I've been a few times in the past as an attendee and a cosplayer. Years ago. I think it was actually another venue then. But yeah, so I've been here a few times, and excited to be back. I'm going to kick off my arrival here with this fantastic panel, which all of you guys have come to attend, in which we talk about a bunch of nerdy shit. Save the best for last, apparently. You guys look awesome. I love you too! Words you would never expect to hear from Guts' mouth. That's unique. So anyway, welcome. My name is Matthew Mercer. I'm a voice actor from Los Angeles, California, and I am a huge doofy nerd. Unabashedly, because I have no choice. It's just who I am. And I like to think that most of you folks out there are in the same vein. So I think we're in a good place. So yeah, for those who don't know, I'm also the Dungeon Master for a show called Critical Role, which is...
You don't know at all.
Where I play Dungeons and Dragons with a bunch of nerdy-ass voice actor friends of mine. So we've been doing it for a number of years now, and it's kind of become a thing that continues to be more of a thing, and we're just. I've had this explanation a few times. I've had this explanation a few times. People ask like, so what is it like with Critical Role getting all this attention? And I'm like, this is the best way I can describe what it is from our perspective. Like me and all the cast of Critical Role, this is what the whole experience has been. What's happening? It's been a very strange, reactionary, wonderful experience where we just don't quite know what's ever happening, and the things that do happen, we're like, how'd that happen? Okay, we're going here now? All right. How many people are watching? Oh, God. So it's been a really incredible, life-changing experience, not just with our experience at the table, but this incredible community that's grown and expanded beyond whatever our little campaign is now. You guys are what Critical Role is, more than we are at this point. And I think that's really special. So, careful, you think it's gonna get cheesy now, guys. You see me cry on the internet too much to know that I'm not afraid. I'm getting emotional here. Yeah. A fun question to throw in the air here. Who here has not watched or knows anything about Critical Role? Raise your hand. That's actually a fair percentage. I apologize in advance for you being extremely confused. But yeah, so you can watch the show. All our back episodes are on YouTube or on Geek and Sundry's Twitch. And you can watch us live on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Geek and Sundry's Twitch. As well as Alpha, if you sign up for Alpha, Project Alpha. But yes, so it's me and it's my wife, Mercer and my... Pretty cool. And then friends of mine, other voice actors, which you may not know, Taliesin Jaffe, Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham, Liam O'Brien, Sam Rico, and Ashley Johnson. And so we began just playing privately. It came through a conversation where poor Liam O'Brien had been lamenting that he hadn't played D&D since he was a kid when he was directing me on, it was Resident Evil 6, if I recall correctly. And I was like, well, I play D&D a lot, because it's what I do with my time. I'll run you a game. And he was like, I'm kind of busy. I'm like, for your birthday, I'll run you a one-shot. He's like, fine. And eventually we got around to it, and he invited the other people over to play, most of which had never played, except for Mercer and Taliesin. I think everybody else were straight-up noobs to the game. And the one-shot went very well, and it turned into a campaign. And about 2 years later, it was still going, and the conversation came up between Ashley and Felicia Day about, how about you put cameras on the show? We were like, I guess. And now we're over 3 years doing this thing weekly, and I'm so thankful. It's nuts. And it's been kind of, for a person that grew up loving tabletop games, loving role-playing games, and a lot of these kind of more niche geek hobbies at the time, you couldn't really talk about it. It wasn't a thing that was socially understood. It was vastly misunderstood unless it was a hobby you were really into. And you were kind of waiting for someone to drop a hint in a social place, and you can jump on and be like, did you just say D20? We're gonna be friends, and you collect these people over time. That's radically changed in just the past 3 years. I'd like to think that we have, we're a small part of it, but it's this the kind of large element of all these different great streams and all these great systems, and kind of this public acceptance now for a lot of people who have kind of been, closeted RPG nerds, can talk about it loud and excitedly and show other people who have always been interested but didn't feel it was kosher to openly say, so what is Dungeons and Dragons? Or when they did ask that question, it was hard to explain it. That was my hard part for many years. So I'd be like, so what is this Dungeons and Dragons thing? I'd be like, well, you tune you make a character, you roll dice, and then you get together and you fight. I'm gonna bye. And I just the other direction. But now we have examples of play we can put online. We have all these great YouTube channels and people that have really in-depth and very comprehensible ways of explaining how the game works and what's so fun about it. That's the hard part, has been describing what it is and what makes it so engaging. And now it's easy to just go, hey, watch this video of so-and-so's stream or so-and-so's game. And now we're finding all these people who have either never had the opportunity to play, but are now able to see what it is and go, oh, I can do that. That's not too hard. And calling up friends and making a game next Saturday. Or people that a long time ago used to play and missed it terribly, and now they have family and kids and 2 careers, and they don't have the time to play anymore, but they can now engage on these shows and these streams online and still be able to kind of vicariously adventure through them. It's led to this really cool resurgence in the space, and now weirdly in a lot of ways, it's uncool to not be playing role-playing games. And that is awesome. It's intense. I've heard friends out in Los Angeles especially, where you guys, I'm sure the whole world has an opinion on Los Angeles being a very kind of elitist, entertainment world. It's not entirely untrue. in a lot of the city, I love it there outside of those spaces. But even there, I'm starting to have people kind of coming out of the woodwork in the industry, like, hey, so yeah. I'd like to play some of that dragon dice thing. Which is like, that's really sweet. But the fact there even is that space now where people are trying to engage with this, even if it is for, you know, personal career ideas, and they might find themselves unintentionally liking it and then just playing the game for fun. I think it's a great time for the hobby, and I'm super excited. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, that's my quick overview of what this is, how it's affected me, how you guys have affected me. And for the most of this panel, I want to make it a conversation. I want to find out what your questions are. I want to talk with you. I want to throw ideas around. So for this, Brittany will be running around and picking people out of the audience when I ask you to raise your hand, so we don't have just people like just running and tackling her to the ground, screaming into the microphone. But try and keep it to one question. And I would ask preferably, because people are possibly at different times in the show, whether it be last campaign, the current campaign, or they haven't watched before and intend to keep spoilers to an absolute minimum. If you can insinuate without specifying anything that you fear might be somewhat spoilerific, try your hardest to. Wink nudge as hard as you can in my direction, and I'll try and return my answer with as much innuendo as possible. You don't know what kind of innuendo, but it could be that too. I'm not discounting the possibility. If you watch the show, we're all a bunch of pervs anyway, it's fine. Especially Laura Bailey. That girl has the mind of like the filthiest 13-year-old. It's absurd. Which is why Shin-Chan, I think, was such a great casting choice for her back in the day. It was an easy in. All right, so let us begin the Q&A conversation portion. Raise your hand gently, and Brittany, who do you deem worthy of a question?
The one closest to me right now.
Proximity
Go
wins.
ahead, your question.
John McMillan, and my question for you, how's it going?
Good.
Is have you or will you ever consider running a one-shot in conventions for us to participate in?
That's a good question. I have been thinking about how we can do that in a safe way. I've run games conventions in the past. Back before Critical Role. Back when I was just an attendee as a voiceover guest, and I would just like run games for fun. So I was like, I just want to play D&D, and nobody was in the rooms at the time. That's not a problem anymore. It's a much more popular space now. So yeah, I'd like to hopefully in future events do like a charity game, and invite attendees from the convention to be a part of it. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. It's a logistics issue to a certain extent, but I'm working on it. I want to try and do things like that. I think it'd be a lot of fun to play with a lot of people here at these events and engage you and hopefully make an experience that's memorable for both of us. So yes, it is percolating. All right. All right, next question.
Hi, I'm a big fan. I actually came because I knew you were coming, so it's really
Oh,
exciting to see
welcome.
you.
Thank you for coming.
But I was going to ask, and I've been wanting to know, is there any role that you've been super excited or blown away that you just couldn't believe you got, such as playing Hit in Dragon Ball, or possibly in Nintendo games playing such as Fire Emblem, or playing Leon from the Resident Evil series, which is a big deal? Is there anything that you just couldn't believe?
Leon was a big one for me. As a person that loved Resident Evil and loved Leon as a character, having the opportunity to pick up and step into those shoes from a character that I already loved so much was a huge honor, a huge point of anxiety as well. Whenever you replace a beloved character in any franchise that's well known like Resident Evil, there's already a big reticle on your chest. The internet's like just waiting for you to mess it up. But yeah, that was a big one. And quite honestly, McCree for Overwatch was a huge one for me. Partially because I hadn't booked the role until far after, about 6 months after they had revealed the trailer at BlizzCon. And I was at that BlizzCon when they showed the trailer and revealed Overwatch as a game, and I was like, this looks so amazing, I want to be part of this so bad. And I knew a bunch of the actors that were in it, and they were like, it's really cool. I'm like, that's cool! I bet it is! But I remember looking at the artwork at BlizzCon. They had the art gallery, and they had all the characters lined up, and I was going through, I'm like, I I can't nor should play any of these characters. You know, they're all like so wonderfully diverse around the whole world. And then I got to McCree, I was like, that guy, I can do that guy. he's about as American white dude as it gets in the cast inside of Soldier 76, I can do that guy. And then some of the auditions came around for those months later, I was like, I saw the art. The names were all different. It was like secret project title. The name of the character was wrong, but I saw the art and I was like, I remember you. So I was very invested in that one. And when I booked it, I remember I had like an evening of excited cartwheels, and I think I like bought a round of drinks for people I didn't know. It was a good night. Good question. All right, over here.
Test? Okay, cool.
You got it.
Basic question. What is your preferred class? What do you play in D&D?
My preferred D&D class. I've run the gamut. I've tried them all. I'm one of those people that will wait for the rest of the group to pick characters so I can pick whatever they're missing. You know, I kind of run support in that regard. So I played a lot of clerics and found that clerics are awesome. But for personal preference, I love the bard. I love the bard for two reasons. Growing up playing second edition D&D in like, you know, the 90s and early 2000s culture of D&D, the bard was just shat on repeatedly. Everyone was like, charisma's a dumb stat. Why would you play a bard? That's so dumb. And I'm like, I'm gonna show you how awesome they are. And so I'd make bard characters and show that one, hey, charisma actually helps. Sometimes avoiding battle can be a lot more effective than going straight into a deadly scenario. Sometimes convincing NPCs to do the work for you can be done. And then in 5th edition, the bards were made even cooler. And so yeah, bards all the way. I think you get a nice gamut of utility across the spectrum of types of role-playing systems you want to. Good in combat, good at support, good in social encounters, and have a great class to just toy with your DM. The high charisma, you can really toy with your DM, so bards all the way. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Jester.
Hello. It's very nice to see you. I have a DM question for you.
Okay.
Do you have any advice on how to make a game that is entertaining for both very experienced players and very brand new players, both in the same game?
Good question.
Thank you.
Fantastic costume, by the way. Look amazing. Have a look at me. It's not that much of a difference, to be honest. The focus is just making sure that you can be conscientious to prepare circumstances and challenges that can spotlight what each character brings to the table. Experienced players will probably be much easier and know how to jump into things and know how the ins and outs of how their class functions. But if you have the inexperienced players, like let's say an inexperienced player plays, let's say for instance, a very dexterous fighter, right? Or a very high dexterity, they're high acrobatics, they're like the one that can just flip everywhere. Well then implement a challenge almost like a classic Mission Impossible Room of Lasers type feel, but it's like a bunch of thin bladed cords. And in order to get across, you know, to disable it, they have to hit a button across the way. And so even the experienced players who may have like a hardy warrior, like, oh, this is not my territory. And so give that player an option. And even if you have to nudge them a bit and be like, you know, if only somebody really dexterous or acrobatic was part of this, they'd be like, oh, I have a high acrobatics. You're like, well, what would you like to do? You know, a little hand-holding is fine until they start getting comfortable with the game. But no matter your experience level at the table, the game can still be fun as long as you make sure that you're engaging what their capabilities are and story elements that can make them feel included. Part of that is just feeling out your table too, and conversing at the top of the game with all the players to make sure everyone knows, like, these guys are experienced, these guys are new. Experienced guys, please don't take over the table, be respectful and let them figure things out. It might take a little longer to learn the rules, so be patient. New guys, if you have any rules questions or you're concerned, don't be afraid to ask more experienced players for guidance, you know, and make them help as well. So those ground rules early really help with it, and then just making sure you set a story that gives the new players an opportunity to figure out and learn what their specialty and strengths are and contribute to the party, making the experienced players appreciate that they're now part of the game as well. So that's my recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're adorable! Oh my God! All right. And we have Brittany's doing the fusion dance over there. Okay.
Hi Matt, my name's Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
I was wondering if you had any experience with the Rifts RPG.
Oh. Yes, I have experience with Rifts. I played it all through high school, sometimes begrudgingly. So for those who aren't familiar with Rifts, it's part of the Palladium universe. Palladium was a company that made their own system of gaming, and they had different licenses. Like, briefly they had the TMNT license, they had the Macross license, but Rifts was one of their big original worlds. And the idea was, it was like a pseudo-future where suddenly all these magical ley lines on Earth began to tear open rifts to other dimensions, and magic became available, but like a bunch of creatures began to play through, and the world was kind of pseudo-decimated, and now like the US was ruled by an anti-mutant government called the Coalition, and then like England actually has magical swords and dragons, and Atlantis rises up, and there's aliens that run it, and Mexico's full of vampires, and it's just, they just put everything into a game. You just kind of mash it together and play it. And that was Rifts. It was absurd. It had the energy of a bunch of excited 13-year-old kids who were given carte blanche to create a world like, oh, well, I'm gonna be like a cyber knight vampire that, you know, his family was killed by moonrakers. He's like, yeah, well, I'm gonna go ahead and be an ancient warlord who can use the power of the sun to summon feral demons. And this guy's like, I'm gonna be a spacefaring power suit armor guy who shoots a giant railgun from his shoulder. And then the GM goes, all right. I guess we're playing Rifts. So yeah, it was absurd. It was fun, but it was definitely thematically all over the place. If you have the opportunity to look up any of the art or look through Rift's book and look for the diverging themes of it, it's a nice little snapshot of RPGs in the 90s, which coincides with comic books of the 90s. It's very much a Rob Liefeld comic book RPG in a lot of ways, where some things just don't make sense, proportions are off, but it's still cool somehow, you don't know why. So I played a Lord Magus campaign for a while. My friend Todd, who owned all the books, and he's the reason we played. He was obsessed with it. It's like the best system ever. And then we played and went, no, it's not, Todd. He's like, shut up, I bought them all. Yeah, Rifts is nuts. And then you get into Wormwood, which is one of the kind of other planets, because there's space travel in there too. And you can, it's all the same universe. So remember there was a game where we hijacked the SDF-1 from Macross, which was the only thing in the game that didn't have a damage value. Everything in the game, even like when you're killing gods in the game, they have like, 13 million hit points with weapons that do a lot of mega damage. This just said, what damage destroys everything in its path. So we hijacked it and then went around killing pantheons. Like, oh, that's cute, you have Odin. Odin's gone, who's next? So Todd stopped liking Rifts. That's my chapter of that. Next question. All right.
Hey Matt, I'm Brian. Hey Brian, got a question for you. So you like Rifts, you like obviously D&D. What other systems do you play, like Fate, Uncharted Worlds, that whole gambit?
Fate's actually a really good system. I like Fate. Like the narrative scale of success and failure, I think is cool, where you can fail but still get a benefit in your degree, or still succeed with a complication. It's a really cool system, and the Fate system's pretty fun. I've played Exalted, a number of systems of Exalted. Exalted, by the way, is like the most anime game out there. Where all the characters, like even all the art is anime style, and you have Diclaves, which are basically giant buster sword gut swords, and all the characters have superpowers that you can combo together, and the more powerful a combo you make and the cooler you explain it, you get benefit dice. Like the whole system is like, how crazy can you explain your attack series? Cool, you get benefits for doing that. It's absurd. It's great. So Exalted's fun. I actually like the Savage Worlds series of settings, but the system is really fun. Dungeon World is great. I really like Dungeon World for narrative. It's kind of like it's like a Dungeons and Dragons light, where it's not so heavy on the combat rules and tactical elements there, but it has all the abilities are much smoother. It's more of a condensed and simplified fantasy role-playing game system. Adam Koble, who's an amazing GM, who is a friend of mine, he created it. He's awesome. So those are all great systems. I enjoy Traveler, because it's one of the few games where you can die in character creation. Because you roll for like each major decade or like period of time in your character's life, and you get more skills and experience based on how long you decide to roll into that character's life. So the older character you begin with, the more skills and experience you have, but there's always a chance that the career path you took will get you killed. So you might get like, oh man, my character's getting really cool. I can't wait to. Oh, he died in action. Start from scratch. So yeah, those are all the systems that come top of my head. I'm sure there's more out there, but there's a lot of questions to get to. Good question.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Melindy. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Has there ever been a time in either campaign where you wish your players would have taken a different path or made a different choice?
I mean, I wouldn't say, I'm not like disappointed in the choices they make, and oftentimes the choices they make lead to far more interesting paths than I would have taken them. I think if Grog had smashed the skull in the first campaign, that would have led to a whole interesting narrative thread. But that just means I get to hold on to those narrative threads for later campaigns. So that's a cool thing as a DM, or as a GM. Any elements of your story that you prepare for your game that the players do not go and explore, save it for later. You can bring it later in that game. You can bring it for another campaign. You know, it's still developed. It's still just waiting for a time where you can plug it in elsewhere. So that was a big one in the recent campaign. I mean, it's not that I wish they took a different path. I put a lot of choices before them, but there's a lot of dangling plot threads that just kind of floating out there, especially in Zadash, that may never come around. Or they might come around if they come back to the city and start exploring them more, or things that they didn't explore have resolved, and when they come back there are consequences for the things they didn't engage with. We'll find out. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything that I'm disappointed, other than like all the battle maps that I painstakingly built, that they never encountered, and like they bypassed whole challenges, and I just had to go home and disassemble it again. But it's fine. I get half joy credit, because it's still just building with Legos for me. So it just means that creation was for me. Good question. All right, over here.
Hi, Matt. I'm Megan.
Hi.
And my question is, well, it has a little bit of a backstory.
All right.
So my coworker introduced me into his Dungeons and Masters group, or Dungeons and Dragons. So sorry, I'm very nervous.
No, it's okay.
So our original DM had to move away, and my coworker took the place of the DM. Well, what we do in person, and if he doesn't like it, he gives our characters consequences. So how do I break up with a DM without making it awkward?
Well, a couple things. First off, if your DM is displaying behavior and how they run the game that is detrimental to the players enjoying themselves at the table, oftentimes talk to the DM about it after a game. Don't like call them on the spot in front of the other players. For some people that might be a last resort, but try and just come at them from a friendly standpoint. Be like, hey, I'm just not really enjoying the way you're doing this. It feels antagonistic. It seems like you're punishing us for enjoying it. Is there anything we're doing that's triggering this? And if his answer for it doesn't seem like it has earned that type of response, then be like, that's not enjoyable for me to play. Is there a way we can compromise on this? Or do you see why this is a problem? And if he doesn't, then you can just be honest and be like, well, I don't have a lot of free time, and my free time is worth a lot to me, so I may just have to take a break. Sorry, you don't have to tell me you're going to find another game. You're like, I'm going to go find somebody who loves me more. You don't have to throw that out there, but just like, I'm just going to take a break from the game indefinitely. If I decide to come back, I will, but respectfully, please continue without me, but I need to put my time elsewhere. And then go find another DM. And thankfully, it's much easier now than it used to be, man. Back when I was growing up, finding a DM was like finding, it was a diamond in the rough type scenario. Anybody who wanted to run it. Because everyone was like, I want to play, but it's impossible to DM. It's not. But that was the assumption at the time. So there was high demand with low opportunity to actually find one. Now that's not so much the case, and I cannot implore you enough. If you've ever been curious about running your own game, give it a shot. Even if it's just a one-shot for your friends, or for your DM that you might have currently, who spends all their time playing, offer to them sometime. Be like, hey, why don't you take a week or two off and let me run a game that you get to play in? And as like a thank you gift to them, and you might discover that you enjoy that side of the table as well. It's really not that difficult, and thankfully there's a bunch of resources online to help you prepare. Whether like I did a series of GM tips on YouTube you can find. This team took over and elevated tremendously that gets other opinions in there. Matt Colville's videos are great, and there's numerous other sources for great information on how to do that. So, good luck. No worries. Over here.
Hello, Matt. My name is Tanner.
Hey, Tanner.
My question is, throughout the first 2 seasons of Critical Role, there have been a lot of miniatures, and I was wondering, what is your favorite miniature or favorite series of miniature?
Okay. For close to 10 years, I would just salivate on the internet at the sight of the limited edition Colossal Red Dragon miniature. It was limited release, and for those who aren't aware, you can look it up online. Look up Colossal Red Dragon miniature, and it's that big, like that high, this wide, with like semi-translucent acrylic red wings and scales, and it was so cool. But I could never afford it. When it released, it was like over $100, and then it's because it was limited edition. Whenever I checked throughout the years, I just like at work and I'd look on the internet, and be like, oh, that's on eBay for $300. No. But miraculously, during the first season of Critical Role, 2 critters sent me that exact mini, which was like super emotional to me. And so I have one that I keep lording over all the rest of my minis at home, and one that we keep on the set at the studio. So they're both very much taken care of and in the right space. So those are pretty important to me. Beyond that, as far as like standard minis that you find in preschool stores, I mean, it's hard not to love the Beholder. Especially the more recent sculpt of the Beholder that came out in the recent D&D sets, because it looks just like the freaky one in the front of the monster manual. And it's bigger. Thank you. Thank you, Ginny. Hydration, important, folks. I recommend it. Like years ago, they released like a pack. Like it was almost like a Beholder family, where they had like the Ice Beholder and the Zombie Beholder, and they were pretty cool, but they were smaller than I was expecting. And so when the new sets released the newer Beholders, and it was much larger and more intimidating, I was like, yes! So excited! Good question. All right, ready? Next.
Hi, Matt. My name is Asia, and I've been fortunate enough to be watching from the very first episode of Critical Role.
OG Critter in the house.
I was wondering, out of all the villains in either campaign that you've had the option of playing, which one was your favorite?
Oh man, I'll give you a scale here. I really enjoy the kind of tragic evil of the Briarwoods, because it is a really tragic story and one that's relatable. And so while they were very wicked people, they did so for reasons that you can almost understand, you know. And I think that's a sign of a good villain. Raishan is just a slippery, conniving, very fun individual. Ripley was fun. Both Ripley, intelligent villains I adore. You know, scary brutes are fun for the sheer fright of having Juggernaut show up on the battlefield, you know, and you know, the music kicks in from Deadpool 2. Holy shit! That's nice, but an intelligent villain that can outsmart and make the party constantly second and guess what and why they're doing things, I think is a great deal. In the new campaign, I mean, I've got a couple that are cooking up that are not revealed yet in the campaign that I'm so excited for. I'm so excited. Oh man. And the last campaign definitely had a lot of, you know, good versus evil, you know, very stark moral contrast. This campaign is a little more gray, you could say. So I'm looking forward to see how I can play with that and some of the narrative elements, and that's all I'm going to say on that. I don't want to reveal too much. Good question. Oh, way in the back. And then we'll bring some to the front after that, I think, so we can get some more folks in the space, too.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Love that Kiku, by the way. I'm jealous.
I DM a home game, but my friends have talked me, out of all things, into DMing a podcast.
you're putting what you're doing online. And thankfully, podcast is nice because it's still recorded, it's not live. That's a whole other level of, oh Jesus. One, it just comes with experience. Atmosphere is a lot. If you set up your game table where there's just a bunch of wires and the microphone's like right in your face and you're having a hard time disengaging from the audio setup, it can be intimidating, and it's a perpetual reminder that this is something that's going to go online for other people to listen to. As much as you can minimize the intrusiveness of your equipment, the better it's going to be for you when you're running your game. Two, just stay focused on your players. And I know it sounds intimidating at first, but like running any game, when you're at the table and your players are engaged, that connection and that energy that you're giving back and forth is hypnotizing. You know, that's how we were so afraid that doing Critical Role on the internet was going to change our dynamic or make it feel weird and distant. But the moment we got in there, even with the cameras and our setup being kind of intrusive, we all trusted each other, and as soon as we started getting into the story, we forgot that we were in the middle of this set. You know, so you got to just trust in the other players, make sure that you engage with them as much as possible, and just work through your nerves. It might take a little bit, and don't beat yourself up if the beginning's a little nerve-wracking. You know, it's part of the experience. I still get nervous every Thursday before I go on. You know, it's just something that happens when you're human and you're putting yourself out there to some degree. So just tackle it head on, trust that you're there to have fun with your friends, and the rest of it will fall into place. Good luck. Oh, hi, sorry. Good stealth check. Hey, buddy.
Good evening.
Good evening. What's your name?
My name is Phil.
Phil. Pleasure to meet you, buddy.
So I'm trying to add some spycraft into the game, not just everybody beating up each other all the time.
Yeah.
How do I incorporate that into the game to kind of maybe divert some of the people who like to fight all the time?
So people this is actually an interesting example. If you haven't watched the most recent Force Grey game we did for the stream of Many Eyes this past weekend, I ran a game for a Force Grey one-shot with people like Joe Manganiello, Deborah Ann Wall. Joe, by the way, if you haven't seen him on the show, he's just a bull in a china shop. In like the best way. That's very much his play style. And so and he told me, I'd already developed a story knowing his play style, and he told me, he's like, I'm playing a Minotaur brute. I'm like, awesome, dude. Because the story was a dinner party. It was them having to have a dinner conversation with a mage merchant who was from out of town, from Cormier, and try and extract information from him while finding ways to get out of the dinner to investigate his rooms and search for any clues. So finding scenarios where combat and defeating or killing whatever the enemy or antagonist is leads to dire consequences is a good way to train them onto that. So putting them in a situation where the laws are very strict, there's a very strong eye, and things like murder or violence is met with being thrown in prison and your character is gone. You know, and instilling that idea, having them come across somebody, an NPC they trust, being like, you're doing this? Understand that if you deviate and hurt or kill anybody here, you're all going to be executed. You know, really instill the consequences of them having that kind of murder hobo mentality. And then present a bunch of challenges that can still be physical and still, you know, involve a bit of, you know, swords and sorcery aspects of it, but aren't necessarily dealing damage to another creature. Things like setting up a super trap dungeon, you know, very much kind of Mission Impossible style, have to, you know, dangle but don't touch the walls or they'll electrocute you for damage. How do you get to this object in the center of the room? Or, you know, everywhere in this area there are runes of a language you don't understand, but the key can only be found when you close your eyes and looking at this one tablet. So one of you has to close your eyes, but when you're not looking away from this one thing, it comes closer towards you, like the ghost from Mario, you know? Interesting ways where you start putting puzzles that require, you know, intellect and problem-solving skills beyond bashing it until it falls over. But the key to that is instilling the consequences. If the players don't feel like there's a consequence to their usual murder hobo actions, they'll still do it. This guy seems like an asshole. And it might be that one of them gets arrested. It might be that whoever breaks that, who challenges you and goes like, oh really? The laws are strict, huh? Well, I stab him in the gut, what happens now? I'm like, well, first off, you stab him and he's a lot more powerful than you thought he was. That's the other thing too. Enemies that are much stronger than your party can still be an antagonist if the victory circumstance isn't knocking them to 0 hit points. If the victory circumstance is framing them for a serious crime, or managing to acquire an item of power under their nose without them noticing, or politically ruining them in front of what they thought were political allies. These are ways that you can still defeat a more powerful creature, and if that creature manages to get away in some way, its character, that becomes a possible down the road antagonist who returns for revenge too. So you get a set of revenge plot where eventually they could come around and then finally beat face to the guy they couldn't when they were much lower level. So those are some ideas. I can go on for a long time about that, but hopefully those will help seed some possibilities. And it's a great excuse to make the charisma-based characters feel useful. Hello!
Hi, I'm Ray.
Hi, Ray.
I was actually wondering, when it comes to unconventional Dungeons and Dragons characters played by one of the players, like a joke character, like a rock star gnome with a guitar, or a character who's unconventional, who like the 1985 film Ladyhawke, where one day they turn into an animal and their familiar turns into a people, so then you're controlling a different character. How can you manage those kinds of characters without them breaking the game while still letting your players have a fun time?
For games like that where you have unconventional mechanics or the characters are a little bit outside of what are the tried and true D&D, regimented class types, one, you gotta check in with the rest of the players and be like, guys, is it all cool if this player plays this character? I've had games in the past where everyone's like, I'm gonna be a human paladin, I'm gonna be a halfling rogue, I'm gonna be a half dragon, half pixie, sky sorcerer, and the rest of the players go like, really? So you want to check in and make sure that everyone's cool with that. And keep in mind that predominantly the point of the game is fun. So if all your players are having a good time, it doesn't matter if the character might be a little over or a little underpowered. As far as running a narrative thing that feels a little strange, like for instance, a rockstar gnome, the keytar, that's awesome. What is the keytar? Is it it's some sort of magical device that creates music. And so you can still play it as a very kind of, charismatic performing musical bard with this weird synth generating magical, lute-ish or a piano, harpsichord-ish object they carry with them, and let them play up that ridiculousness. Let them be glamorous. Let them just, spellbind audiences and gain fans and a following. And now they have to deal with the fact that it's hard to adventure when there's paparazzi outside, So there's ways you get to play with that in that regard. The Ladyhawke idea is actually a really cool idea, and doesn't change it too much in the fact that they just have 2 different characters that they have to switch between as they go back and forth. So make those 2 characters balanced in the rules if you're worried about game balance. But ultimately, balance is less important over having fun. So as long as the character doesn't feel so powerful, the other players don't feel as useful, or they don't, overstep over somebody else's, niche specialty, then it probably won't be a problem. And if it becomes one, you can adjust it. The Dungeon Master can change anything. And most players are cool with changes as long as you engage them with it and explain why. If you show up and be like, hey, that thing I gave you, it's too broken, I'm taking it away. Probably be a little sore on that, but if you're like, hey, I was looking at this and how it played out, it's coming across a little more powerful than I intended, I don't want the other players to feel left out, is it okay if I scale it back a little bit? Or what can we do to make it, and even ask that player's help in finding a compromise to make it more useful. That way you guys build it together, and that also is a cool tool there. So those are some suggestions. No worries.
Great, where's that?
Oh, way over there. Second gesture of the night! Hello! You look amazing!
So I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So I just finished my first year of teaching.
Oh, nice.
And I'm teaching in a middle school setting next year, and I was wondering if you had any advice on how to start a group for D&D for like 6th graders.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
Well, a couple things. One, if you want to try other similar systems that are simpler, once again, Dungeon World is a great system that's not quite as mechanically in depth. If you're worried about it being too complex and losing interest, which can happen, you have kids at school all day that have to focus on algebra and geometry, and you're like, let's play a game where you get to add numbers together. Sometimes it can kind of shake them off the trail a bit. So considering a system that's not quite as number-centric can be helpful, but if you want to stick with the D&D, find ways that you can simplify it. As opposed to having them roll dice for every single damage die, you can use an average for a weapon, kind of like they do in the monster manual. Instead of a longsword doing 1d8 plus 3 damage, you can take an average of it and be like, oh, well, like 4 or 5. So just like, it does 5 damage plus their strength modifier. That way all they're having to roll is that d20. You know, and then as they get older, you can expand the system a bit. But you can make it as simple as you want. You can have them just choose a race and a class, give them, handpick a couple of abilities that are there, and if they are ever curious about how something works, maybe ask them, how do you think it works? And they're like, I think it would work like this. Then work with it. And eventually you might mutate the system into something that's its own variation of D&D, but you've kind of built it together, and the players feel like the kids feel like they've engaged and helped build this world and experience with you too. So really, it's a lot of yes and. You don't want to deny them a lot of times. If they have a suggestion that maybe doesn't work with their character, doesn't work with the story, instead of saying, that doesn't quite work, they're like, okay, how can we make it fit with this? And engage them, because it also helps problem solving in that degree, helps them work with you as a teacher, as well as with the group to develop the story. It's a cool space to kind of build that together. But there are a lot of great articles online and a lot of people that are starting to put up videos about playing D&D with younger kids. So also looking on YouTube and online is a great resource to get other suggestions, people that have been doing it for quite some time. So I recommend that as well. Awesome, thank you. Oh, here we are.
Hey Matt, I'm Kevin.
Hey Kevin.
How much, when you're doing world building, because I know you're doing a lot of that, how much of that is your own pure creation and imagination? How much of that leans on tropes and cribbing from other sources?
Okay, so for the world building.
Yes.
Well, the Pantheon of Exandria is essentially the Dawn War Pantheon from 4th edition D&D. Because when I started the game, it wasn't attempting to be a world building exercise. Exandria was supposed to be one shot. It was supposed to be Stillbend. It was supposed to be a single swamp town. And so as they expanded into a full campaign, I was trying to make it an easier thing for myself, just for planning and a familiar space. So the first campaign in the first continent, Tal'Dorei, definitely is the most classic fantasy trope-ish. As far as directly pulled, I don't know how many I may have directly pulled, but I know there are many influences in there. Tolkien is hard not to be influential in any fantasy world setting. It's kind of, Lord of the Rings nearly created what we know the genre is today. Other good examples would be a lot of Neil Gaiman's work, Neverwhere. Those are all places where you find weird, quirky characters and places to shift someone's perspective on reality, like when it comes to the Feywild and things like that. The world itself is original. Some aspects of it are things that I plucked from older campaigns that I created and I really enjoyed. A lot of NPCs that have come in have been either previous characters of mine or variations of characters my friends have made that I liked and kind of changed them into my world. Both immortalized them with me personally and because I just wanted to throw them out there and see what would happen. But I'd say a majority of it is original, but I'm sure a lot of it is influenced or derivative of something, because all creativity is you taking what has excited you and then finding some way to make it your own. I don't think it's impossible to create something wholly original, but there's no shame in making something original out of the things that have inspired you. So yeah, I hope that answers the best I can. I don't know if it specifically may have influenced it, but I know a lot of things have subtly influenced my world building. Good question. The noises accompanying it are pretty great.
Hi.
Hello.
I was wondering, what's your favorite childhood memory of D&D?
My favorite childhood? Oh, that's a sweet question. What's your name?
I'm Allie.
Allie. Pleasure to meet you. Good question. Favorite childhood memory of D&D? 2 of them. One of them was more of a ridiculous scenario, where I was running a game with my friend Todd, my cousin Steve, and my friend Ian, and they were 2nd edition D&D. They were pretty power gamer-ish, because that's just how it was. My friend Todd made a ranger using the archery kit, or was a fighter using the archery kit, and found a way to game the system where he could fire like 6 or 7 arrows in a single round, because 2nd edition D&D. With like specialties, you know, and mastering of weaponry and everything. It just was ridiculous. I remember I was so excited to get into this one point where they would fight their first dragon. It was a sleeping green dragon in this cavern. It was just asleep on top of its hoard, and I was explaining, like, as it was breathing in and out, you could feel the temperature rise and fall in the chamber, and the steam would kind of obfuscate the floor a bit. And like, are sleeping? All right. What are you gonna do? Like, you gonna talk to it? Like, we attack. Are you sure? That's probably not a good idea, but okay, all right. So they all roll their attacks, and Todd, his character, goes, just Legolas's the shit out of this dragon. Rolled really well and had all these damage bonuses, and he added them all up, and I was like, okay, so the dragon begins to wake as its eyes slowly curls open. Ooh, it closes once more as it dies on the spot where it was standing. It was like the most anticlimactic boss fight that's ever happened in the game for me. They're like, cool, what's in the loot pile? I'm like, let's roll and see, asshole. So that was definitely memorable. One of the other scenarios would be Pike's death. The home campaign began pre-critical role. Pre-critical role. This is before we started streaming. She died and came back. This isn't a spoiler for the campaign. Sorry, I didn't freak you out. When we were still playing at home, I realized how that probably freaked out a few people here who weren't caught up. I'm so sorry. No, we were still playing at home. We'd played for about a year and a half or so, and they got to this one point in the story they were fighting what is called a glabrezu. It's a demon that is made of treachery and is conniving and can change forms. It's a great creature, and had kind of led them to this point where they were fighting it, and Pike got up next to it and like healed one of their friends and was like shouting at it, commanding in the name of her deity, and it just turned and struck her with one of those giant like pincer claws, critical hit, killed her instantly. And it was the first time in the campaign at that point, because they were still low level, that one of them had died. Like they'd been unconscious, they'd have that was the first time they actually went like, oh. And I think actually Liam had a Vine, I think it lives on YouTube still in infamy, but there's a Vine of everyone screaming as it's happening. Now she's like, oh my God, what? And so it led to them all of a sudden, like teary-eyed, charging at this beast, going, yeah! So it turned into this huge like vengeance for Pike moment. They all swarmed in, they defeated it, they rushed her to the temple. In the process, that was our first resurrection skill challenge we did in the campaign. And everyone was just tears down their face, like holding hands. It was such a wonderful emotional moment. And like those moments, that was more so than any other moment that came that I realized what we had at that table was special. You know, and so that moment will stick with me for a very, very long time. Good question. Looks like we've got a bit of an extension to the panel, so we can do a few more questions. Hello.
Hi, I'm Marcus.
Hey, Marcus.
How do you? I mean, obviously you're a voice actor, so it's really easy for you. But do you have any advice for like DMs that want to keep voices fresh and like new, but it's like really hard to stick to one voice for a very long time?
Ooh, good question. So for DMs that want to like expand their range of voices for NPCs or stick to voices, one thing helps is when you come up with an NPC voice that you want to utilize, and the NPC might show up multiple times in the campaign, record yourself doing that NPC voice on your phone for a little bit. Like get some simple recording software on your computer or if you have a smartphone, you can do it on your smartphone. That way, whenever you need to refresh yourself on what that NPC sounded like, you can just listen to that quick audio clip, and it'll help you dial back into where you were. Secondly, take notes for every NPC that you create, whether it was in advance of you playing the session or in the moment, because you'll be making up people left and right. That's how the nature of the game works. Take a note next to whatever name they were, what type of voice you may have used. You know, was it low and gravelly? Was it high-pitched and reedy? Was it whispery and sultry? Was there some sort of a dialect or accent or affectation you added to it? You know, take some quick notes so you can later on after the session, you know, write it down somewhere to refer to later. As far as just learning on your own, spend a lot of time by yourself talking out loud to nobody. You kind of just, it's just like with any other form of voiceover. Bye. People who are leaving. You just gotta practice on your own, try things out. If you think you do one cool voice and you can do another cool voice, see how you can merge the two and find a third cool voice. You know, it's one thing to have like a low gravelly thing, and it's another to have a high-pitched nasal. Now, if you combine the two, you get sort of an in-between creepy, you know? So you know, if you have a cool voices in your toolbox, see how you can merge and twist and combine them to create whole new things, and then record those and use that as reference for later. So it's just practice, learning. If you want to try out dialects or accents to listen to, there's a really great resource online called the International Dialects of English Archive, or the IDEA. The International Dialects of English Archive, and it has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of audio files of people all around the world. It's all organized by continent, country, region, and you get to listen to these people who live there with these different accents and dialects, talking and reading English words and English phrases and stories, and you can listen to those and kind of take inspiration and practice those various accents and dialects. So those are as much of a toolbox I can get into now with the short time I have to answer a question, but I hope that gets you running, so good question, man. Over here.
Hi.
Hello.
It's Erin.
Hi, Erin.
My question was, did you start DMing for the cast for your home game more out of necessity, or is that your preferred role? And how do you avoid getting burned out when DMing?
Good questions. DM is my preferred role. I enjoy playing tremendously, and I do miss it often. So I get to really relish the moments I do play. But for me, dungeon mastering is a very different kind of joy. To me, it's a gifting experience. Playing is participating and creating with your family of your other players, and that's really incredible and a really thrilling experience. Dungeon mastering and game mastering is you creating a story for your friends, and then basically gifting it to them and saying, here, I made this for you. I hope you enjoy it. And then all of you get to build off of that together. And it's like, I don't know, there's no fulfilling energy quite like it for me. So for me, it's my greatest high playing any sort of game is running or dungeon mastering or game mastering for friends. To avoid burnout, you can take a break. If you're starting to get to a point where you feel like it's really weighing on you, the inspiration isn't coming, you need to recharge, talk to your players and be like, hey guys, things are just really stressful right now. I'm kind of in a bit of a creative slump. I need to get my charge back. Is it cool if we take a break on a regular gaming schedule? Give me a few weeks. Are you guys interested in running some one-shots that I can play in and see if that inspires me? Or maybe just take some time and not focus on the game for a bit. And if they're good friends, they'll be like, sure. They're like, no, I demand your creative sustenance. Like, then, maybe not a good friend. But yeah, so take a break if you have to. Walk away. Music, hikes, whatever you can do to get your mind off of it and just relax a bit and not feel like you have to create. The moment that you feel enslaved to the narrative your players are expecting and you're no longer enjoying it, you're not doing it for the right reasons, and you're end up doing more damage to your joy of the hobby than you would if you just walked away. So just talk with the players, take a break, give them the opportunity maybe to run a game for a bit, and then when you're ready to come back to the table, go for it. And it might not, it might take a while, and that's totally fine. If you're near a good narrative point in your campaign where you can pause it for a while, you know, if you think there's a point in the story in the next 2 or 3 sessions where you're like, we could do a time jump. There might be a narrative moment where I could be like, all right guys, we'll complete this current narrative arc, and then I'm gonna step away. I'm gonna take a 6-month break, and we can play other games, and then 6 months later we'll come back and come, you know, back to that story 6 months later in the story too, and by then you've had time to prepare, had time to think and relax and not feel too stressed out about it. I've done that before, a couple games in the past. And it kind of felt good because they're all kind of returning these old characters they love, and it's been a little while, and it's like this kind of nostalgic feeling, and they get to discuss what their characters did in that, you know, time in between, and you hopefully have time to recharge. I hope that helps. No worries, thank you.
Hello, I'm Logan. Hi! What helps or inspires you to create interesting stories and places in your game?
What inspires me to create interesting stories and places in my game?
Yes.
My friends who play. Paying attention to what your players enjoy in the game, what they were wanting out of it, and what kind of character tidbits they've left for you is ripe territory to pull from. You know, if a character writes a story where they, you know, used to be like a highway robber, right? That's a cool opportunity for you to go ahead and create a place in the world where a bunch of robbers and, you know, criminals congregate to trade and do business. That could tie into that character's story. Or if another player has a cleric who belong to a temple that was, sundered years ago, and they have since been ousted because there was nowhere to live. That's a cool location for that ruins of that temple now to be either a haunted ruin, holding the spirits of those vengeful clerics that died there when it was sundered, or for that order to be returning and trying to rebuild it, they can come back to later in the story. So your player stories are a great place for inspiration to help you expand the world based on what you think their needs down the road or their interests in the narrative might lead them. Beyond that, what do you want to do? What do you want to see? Sometimes it starts with what kind of encounters you want to run. It'd be really fun if my players challenged a giant jelly monster. Sure. Or they fight a jelly monster. What if there was like a weird volcano, but instead of lava, it created like molten gelatin? Welcome to Jello Mountain in the northern crests. It could be as simple as trying to decide you want there to be like a long high bridge battle, kind of a Khazad-dûm style, having the players fighting against other creatures on a high bridge with the chance of falling is certain doom. Where would that be? Would it be in a mine under the ground? Would it be high above between two large towers of a castle establishment? That little bridge battle idea you had has now built. You begin to just expand off that into where that bridge might be. If it is in a city, what kind of city is it? Why would there be bridges? Is it because the bottom of the city is filled with toxic water, but kind of almost like the canals of Italy, people have to traverse around them, but they've just learned to live with it? Now you have a toxic water canal city with a high bridges. There you go, coming out of a simple idea for an encounter that you eventually want to run. So sometimes as opposed to being like, I have to build everything at once, just pick a small seed of inspiration and see where it takes you. Some of it might not work, some of it you can save for later, and then down the road might be like, that was kind of a cool thread there, let me try and retool it a bit. But don't feel the pressure to have to create everything at once. I get that a lot from people that are especially newer DMs or people that are new to world building their own homebrew games are like, where do I start? I'm like, anywhere. Throw a rock and start there. Where did that rock hit? I don't know. Where do you think it might hit? A stable. Okay, what's in that stable? There's an old man who started the stable and he's trying to teach his grandkid how to break the horses. Great. Did that grandfather have a history before he was a stable master? What if he used to be an adventurer? Okay. When he was an adventurer, what did he do? Well, maybe he was once a cleric, but he lost his faith. All right, why did he lose his faith? Because he lost his friends in a battle. Where was this battle? This battle was, a field away a long time ago. Okay, now you have the stable master in the stable in a long battle and this old history of a party that now died away. What could have threatened that? Maybe the town itself is still a threat for what killed this party member. What's next to the stable? It's a tavern. Well, who's in that tavern? And you just kind of build piece to piece. And focusing on the smaller parts makes it less stressful. And then over time, you unintentionally realize that you've built a tavern and you've built a surrounding landscape. So start small, expand. That's my recommendation for your first time giving it a shot. Good question. Hi.
So I just wanted to ask a question about voice acting, I guess.
Yeah, what's your question?
What was your favorite role to play, and has there been one that has changed you on how you see voice acting or something like that?
Favorite role to play? Man, it's hard pressed. There are a lot of roles that mean a lot to me. Being able to play Tigra in the 2011 Thundercats show was very important to me because I grew up loving Thundercats as a kid, and that was my first opportunity to work with Andre Romano, who's a legend when it comes to voiceover. Being able to work with Will Friedle, who many of you know, his brother Kashaw in the first campaign. He was my Lion-O. Getting to work with Kevin Michael Richardson, D. Bradley Baker, and all these amazing voice actors. Like, that show and that character meant a lot to me for a lot of reasons. Personally, for my interests and the characters that I enjoy, I'd say two that really affect me are Adair and Aloth in Pillars of Eternity. And the reason for that is, one, I grew up playing Baldur's Gate and isometric RPGs. Like, that was my jam in the 2000s. So the fact that was kind of the spiritual successor to that, I was really important to be a part of it. For me to be involved. I backed the Kickstarter before I was even cast in it. I was like just excited to play it. But these two characters are so diverse and different between the two of them. You have Adair, who's this kind of sort of backwater farmer, from the Deerwood, who's just trying to make his way around. And, maybe his god got killed, and maybe he'll be angry, but just put me at the front of your party, and I'll try not to get your head bashed in. He's just this easy boy with some dark past, and he just hangs out and loves animals. I want to pet him. So Adair's fun. But then Aloth, who is this elven sorcerer who's very upper crust and sort of keeps everything organized and wants to make sure that you all understand that right now I'm very uncomfortable. He's fun, he's prissy, he's into his books and into his opinions. But he also carries a secondary soul in his body of this woman from long ago named Isilmir. And Isilmir sometimes can be a bit feisty and takes over when she feels like it. So she's the one to be pushed around, and if anyone's gonna get in her face, she's gonna bullet them in the gullet. Very sorry about that. That wasn't me. That was Isilmir. So like those are characters that in role-playing games you get to spend a lot more time with the characters that you're inhabiting. And I had the chance of inhabiting 2 very different characters through 2 games now, including expansions. So for me, I've kind of lived with these characters for years and got to play through their whole narrative arcs. And in the most recent game, one of them is romanceable, so that's always fun too. So I got to do a whole romance arc, male and female. And so it was really fun to kind of live with these characters for a while. So Aleph and Adair mean a lot to me. They really do. And the people at Obsidian have been so great, and the collaboration there and telling these stories have been good. They're probably up there at the top of my list these days. Good question. Got time for a few more. Let's try and get through a few. I know I've been long-winded tonight. I'm sorry, guys.
That's perfectly fine.
Thank you, Jester. I appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Justin.
Hi, Justin. You look glorious.
I just want to ask, what's your favorite battle map that you've ever built, and which one are you the most proud of?
Oh, my favorite, which one?
Battle map you've ever built, and which one are you most proud of?
My brain isn't working right now. Battle map. There we go. Thank you. Sorry, I flew out this morning. Oh man. The one last night was pretty fun. So Taliesin, those who don't know, Taliesin bought me a special present months ago. That's basically a tiny fog machine for your miniature maps. It's the coolest thing, and it just needs water. No like special fog mix or anything. So I got to unveil it last night in the map. So when you catch up, if you haven't seen it yet, you'll enjoy that. That one was fun. I'm hard pressed not to say the map for the final battle of the last campaign. I'm not going to say what it was, but the final battle. It was 2 weeks of crafting on my own, like free time to finish that one. So it was like molding and sculpting and designing and painting and shellacking and creating. It was a modular map. It was essentially a map that they had previously fought on that had been shattered and sundered, and all the pieces that were broken were just floating islands kind of holding themselves by tethers of arcane energy. And so it was multiple pieces that would shift every couple rounds and move and part and spin, and some of them were angles, and so it made this very dynamic battlefield for a final confrontation. I was super proud of it, so that one's definitely up there. I still have it in a box somewhere. I don't have the heart of getting rid of them. I'm like, I'll reuse you again one day, probably not. But yeah, those two definitely stand out, I think. Thank you.
Hello there.
Hello to you, sir.
My name is Dre, but my question for you is, so I love your voice as Leon, and Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 2, just the series in general was always a big thing for me in my childhood, and I gotta ask, when it came to voicing Leon in Resident Evil 6, did you just mainly look at Resident Evil 4's Leon for your inspiration of his voice, or did you look back at RA2's more corny, dialogue and voice and sort of take that into your decision of how you were gonna voice him?
That's a good question. I look back at both. Paul Haddad and Paul Mercer are both incredible for their own, takes on it. Paul Haddad's was a much younger version of Leon. It's just literally his first day on the force, of course. Worst timing. But for me, Paul Mercer and Resident Evil 4 really defined the character for me. So I looked stronger to his performance. Plus, it was closer in the timeline to where I was picking up with Leon. So I definitely paid attention, listened to a lot of what he had brought to the character, wanted to carry as much of that nuance to what I had to do, and also kind of give it a little bit of my own flavor, make it my own, and be conscious that the Leon in 6 is a lot less cocksure than the one in 4. He's much more browbeaten, and the world has definitely taken its toll on Leon by then. I got to play more in that happy-go-lucky space when it came to Resident Evil Damnation, which was the transition period between like, sure, Leon to sure, Leon. So it's been kind of fun to run that whole gamut there, but yeah, definitely Paul Mercer, which was kind of weird too, because I'd worked with him on a few video games, and so taking over the role from him, I was like, yay! Hey, buddy! But he's good people. Thank you. All right, over here, sir.
Hi, my name's Rob.
Hey, Rob.
So, you said you've run the gamut of classes, which means you've run my favorite, the Warlock. Yeah. I gotta know, Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Blade, or Pact of the Tome? What do you like the best?
Ooh.
This is a lot about it.
I love weird familiars. So like for me, there's something in the idea of having tiny imps and like intelligent creatures that not just can talk but can just dig into you and ridicule you as their master. It's such a delicious tool, especially as a dungeon master. So yeah, I have to go with Pact of the Chain, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, fortunately for me. I just think I'm not talking combat tactical, optimization, of course, but yeah, being able to bring that intelligent, demonic entity there on your shoulder who occasionally can lean in and be that bad voice that tells you to burn things. That's so much fun. That's so much fun as a player and as a DM. So that's definitely my choice. Good call. I've got 15 more minutes, so I can do this. There's a few more questions. Over here, yes.
Hi, my name's Emma.
Hello.
I was wondering, when you have guest characters come on, they're always so wonderful to come on. How much influence do you have over when they build them to influence them into the story, or do you just let them do their own thing and build around it?
That's a good question, actually. For guests, I let them create what they want, character-wise. Tell me the kind of character, personality, and story they want their background to be. And then from that point, I come in and work with them on how to tie their story into the world and the current narrative. Like, for instance, with Mark, our most recent guest, who created Callie, he created Callie entirely. He created the name, the character, the class, the race, the kind of cult back history, the escaped cultist idea, and came to me with that, and I said, okay, well, as far as cults go, what kind of cults would you have maybe been a part of? And he's like, maybe like Tiamat, because of my dragon blood. I'm like, okay, well then, I will now incorporate some elements of the story that deal with the Tiamat cult and an item that I created that then I added to his story, and that's what he's after, which was the bowl item. So once they've created the character and created the kind of story they want that character to come from, then it's a back and forth collaboration of the two of us, of them telling me what they want to do, and then me weaving it into the narrative and giving them ideas, and they take that thread and they create it more until eventually we feel pretty good about them being able to seamlessly make their way into the episode they're going to be on. Sometimes it's simple, like when we had Chris Perkins on, he made a Shale, who was the female Goliath character, and I was like, what's her background? He's like, well, she probably ran with a bunch of Goliaths, but they were probably all killed off, and she's the sole survivor. I'm like, perfect. That group of them were on the mountain, and they were just killed by a black dragon. Go! So sometimes it's real easy, but sometimes it's a little more nuanced. With Kari Payton, who played Shakasta in the new campaign, he has a very nuanced backstory. So it was really fun to talk and weave a lot of the story with him and know that a lot of it's just not going to be seen, for now anyway. So yeah, I don't want to control players and what they play. I want them to create. I want them to be creative. I want them to create what they want to and write what they want to. And then at that moment, I step in and say, okay, how can we tie this to our narrative? That way, they have free reign and they get to be excited about what they're playing. Good question. All right, we've got time for a few more.
Hey, what's
Hey, yeah, you look awesome.
What's going on? I'm sorry, I'm super duper nervous. Okay, so I was running a game with my players. I'm a new DM, started DMing because I saw you DMing and was like, got it, I can try. And my players, I had a one-shot whole thing lined out. Players completely just went off my script for the few things I had planned. What do you do when your players completely blindside you and you have nothing to do?
Let them guide it. At a certain point when the players do that, it's one of those like, okay, guys, well, what do you want to do? What are you interested in doing? And they're like, well, I want to go drinking. All right, so now you start making up, a drinking hole. you know, or maybe there's a drinking contest happening. Great, let's go to the drinking contest. It's a lot of improv at that point. And what you can do is to prepare for the unexpected as best as you can. Create some NPCs that aren't tied to the narrative you've prepared, that are just kind of floating in the world, kind of to have in your back pocket. Be like, oh, it'd be kind of interesting. What if there was like a bald, one-eyed monk who was kind of a little pudgy, almost like a nice Buddha fist fighter, you know? I don't know where I'd put him, but he's in my pocket. And if they go to this drinking contest they weren't expecting, they look up and they see a one-eyed bald monk who's drinking heavily and wipes his lip and goes, hey, you wanna wrestle? You know? It's like you make up these characters that you don't know where they're gonna go, and then when the players take an entire unexpected turn, you have those in your pocket in case a moment arises where you have to have an NPC there, and as opposed to having to, oh, you run into a human, blonde hair named James. James is high. You know? So having those little disparate elements that may never show up, it's just more comfortable for you and helps you with a little bit of preparation. But really, on it, it's just letting the players drive the story and being reactionary. What do you want to do? You want to go to a tavern? All right, describe a tavern you're making up on the spot. What do you want to do? I want to see if there's any chances that undead have been coming out of the graveyard. Okay, start making up a graveyard. How would it look like as they get there? What do you want to do when you're in the graveyard? I'm going to start inspecting some graves. Roll an investigation check. Okay, as you start going through, most of them seem undisturbed. It looks like one of the fresher graves itself is partially open. When you see a grave hand off the side that's like currently cursing as he's digging a grave or putting dirt over it, patting it. I'm going to talk to the guy who's the keeper of the graveyard. Okay, and now you've made up a graveyard character, but you can say like, well, it's just been a problem. These graves need to stay down. I'm like, why are they coming up? It's like, I don't know, since that full moon came last week, we've had 3 bodies come up out of there. Now you have a whole undead narrative that you didn't expect to have, but you're literally reacting to what the players do. You know, what do you do next? What do you want to do? Where are you going? What are you looking for? And then whatever they say, create something based on that request. That's a really, really cool trick to playing off a narrative that you weren't expecting to go with. That way, essentially, they don't know it, but they're driving that car pretty hard. So I hope that's helpful. No worries. Rise and answer.
Hi, Matt. I would stand, but I'm in a wheelchair, so not gonna
Stay.
do that.
I have these moments every now and then. My foot goes right in my mouth.
Actually, my question for you is, how do you feel about disabled player characters in D&D? I've had some people tell me that it's unrealistic for a disabled person to be an adventurer, or that it's too much work on the party or the DM to accommodate disability in a player, which I kind of get. Like, I've tried to play deaf characters before, and it becomes a huge deal. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. How do you feel?
That's a very, very good question, actually. I think it's ridiculous. I have a number of friends. My friend Sam, who many of you may have seen on Shield of Tomorrow, they can kick my ass. They are one of the strongest, most fit people I know, and they are practically an adventurer today, you know, in the modern world. I think it's, if they're like, I'm trying to narratively think about it, work with you to find out a reason. I don't know if you want a character that you know, is a paraplegic, you can go ahead and decide on a magical means of locomotion. Or perhaps they are a tinkerer and they created the first wheelchair, you know? I mean, I know adventuring parties that are pretty damn slow and you would outrun them very easily. So I think it's absurd to place that barrier. In a world where there is magic and there is the ability to command the skies, the elements in the heavens, that there couldn't be means of finding anybody with any sort of disability anywhere, you know, on the same level of power as any able-bodied person. I think it's absurd. I'm not saying, you know, if a DM is challenging you on that, then have the conversation on how you can convince them that it wouldn't break the narrative or seem unrealistic. If they're unrelenting, maybe that's not the table for you. That's the thing too, is you don't have to force it to work if you're not jiving with the players or the game master at the table. It's much better to not have a game than to have a game that is not fun and possibly toxic to you. That's just how it is. I've left I have gamed with people in the past that I've asked to leave and not come back to campaigns I've been running. I've been at tables where I was the odd man out and said, this is not the game for me, and then didn't return. And that's okay. Because there's, as you see now, especially today, a vast number of really good people out there that are always willing to look for another player. Yeah! So.
that you can send your Twitch channel.
Oh, thank you so much, by the way. That's amazing. That is not an easy job. So I really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate
All
it.
of them say hello.
Tell them hi for me, please.
I will.
They're amazing.
I want to first off say thank you. To make a long story short, your guys' show means a lot to me. Like, during 2016, I lost a cousin due to a freak accident. He died at a very, very young age. He would have been 19. And so your show is like an escapism for me, and also the lovely community that has come out of it. So thank you guys. So going over about tabletop RPGs, what has been, besides Mansions of Madness, what else has been your favorite tabletop game, board game?
Good question. Mansions of Madness, by the way, is awesome if you haven't played it. As a Lovecraft Universe fan of the universe, not a fan of the guy Lovecraft. He's kind of a tool bag. It's true. But Mansions of Madness is great. I really enjoy a lot of deck building card games. I actually had the Resident Evil one for a while. That one was pretty fun. Me and Mercer got in a lot of fights over that. Let's see. Really enjoy Small World. Small World's a blast. Pandemic, especially the legacy games are great. Pandemic Legacy is awesome. For those who aren't sure what the legacy games are, imagine a board game that every time you play, it's a continuous narrative and there's like a campaign, but you physically change the game as you play. You add stickers to the board and you tear cards up and you damage the game as you play based on what happens. It's pretty fun. And a really cool tactic for the game designers because it has a built-in reason for you to buy it again. Don't think we haven't noticed, guys. That's really fun. What else we can get into? I mean, Munchkin has ruined many friendships in the best way possible. Resistance is great. The Battlestar Galactica board game's great. Also ruins friendships. All three of those ruin friendships. Yay, friendship! Oh man, it's kind of. There are a lot of really good games out there. We keep going back to Mansions of Madness because they keep releasing good expansions, especially the second edition. Brittany here, in particular, has been she's sabotaged a lot of those games. She tends to decide. She tends to go crazy and then kill everybody else. It's kind of fun. But yeah, so those are some of the top ones that I enjoy. I still have my old Dungeons and Dragons Clue, which was fun. It came out in the mid-2000s with 3rd edition. Because I think it's one thing to be like, I say it was Colonel Mustard in the dining room with the candlestick, or going, I think it was Kaylee the Halfling Rogue with the axe of flaming in the dragon's dungeon who killed the Archmage. I don't know. That's more my style anyway. Those are all the ones off the top of my head. I know there's more coming. The Dark Souls board game. I was one of the Kickstarter backers on that. It's hard, but it should be. And the minis are so pretty. Oh, Steam Fortress makes such pretty minis. So yeah, recommend that. Good question.
All right, everybody, this is our very last question.
Okay.
So thank you all so much. Put your tired arms down, and here we go.
I'm sorry if I didn't get your question. There's another voiceover panel tomorrow. You can come to that. So hopefully we'll get it there. Thank you for your patience. Jill? Cheryl. Pleasure to meet you, Jill.
In my first ever campaign in my 6th session, we were trying to talk to a adult blue dragon, and he flaunted the fact that he had just eaten a child, and my character very much has a problem with that, and in a moment of rage, he attacked it, and because of that, 2 of our characters died. What is the worst decision you've ever made in an RPG that could have or did cause the death?
Well, recently throwing a venom troll at the party. We almost lost Bo because of another player. Me personally, I can't say I've made a choice that killed a player character, because I always been playing support roles, and I'm always very like, no! I have many friends who have. And, actually no, I've got myself killed a lot. I've got myself killed a lot. I did have a halfling rogue character. What was that? That was my friend Bender's 4th edition campaign. We were going through a subterranean dungeon, and there was this one large door that had kind of been looming and had been locked the whole time. We're trying to find a key to get through it. And as we were suddenly being attacked by this like tentacled creature that was coming down the hallway, we were like, rush towards it. I'm like, all right, fine. Go ahead, we'll just slam on the door. As I go to rush for it, I go ahead and just quickly make a lockpick check. Succeeds, the door opens, and just skeleton pieces start just pouring out of the chamber like sand and completely bury me to the point where the players had to decide to avoid the tentacle monster or save me. And so they left me. And it was the right decision. Slayer's take. Oh my god, it's actual tattoo! Holy shit! That's amazing. Nothing is stranger than seeing something you drew on somebody else's body. That's wild. I love it. But yeah, so I've died and had other players' decisions kill me before. But if it made sense narratively and some adventures, you know, it isn't a family as much as it is a group of business professionals, and hard choices have to be made, and I don't begrudge them that. Yeah, it happens. It happens. Sometimes you just have to make sure you take that player out for drinks afterward. They brought back. Okay, that feels a little better. But for the times they don't, you know, take them out for a good old Irish wake afterward, buy them some presents, maybe take them to an amusement park. Try and make it up to them. Good question. Well, folks, that unfortunately is the end of our panel this evening. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this conversation. Thank you for being such an amazing group of people to support what we do and to support what all of you do. This community is so important to me and so important to all of you and so many people there. I'm so proud of everything you guys are doing. It's really humbling and inspiring. So keep putting more positivity in their world. We need it. We love you! We love you! Have a wonderful night. And there's a Thursday.